have a dream, all right? I have a dream that someday this could be speedrunning's future. You know, a big speedrunning event where everyone's here to watch the best face each other. I have a dream that this could someday happen. Will it happen? I don't know. But we already kind of have some sort of speedrunning events, right? We have stuff like Pace. We have Speedrun Summit, which happens in a week. There's Ludwig's Fast 50. There's GDQ. These are all speedrunning events. Most of them are basically just like speedrunning marathons trying to raise money for charity. Like if you take the fighting game community, this isn't like, there is no, what's the biggest one? Evo? There's no like Evo for speedrunning, right? Pace is pretty much the closest we have to it. They're the only ones I believe that do like tournaments. I don't think anybody else really does any sort of tournament. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that's it. These people have venues, right? They're in person. They're like conventions, right? I'm pretty sure Pace is a speedrun convention. But is there something, sorry, ignore my voice crack right there. Let me redo that. Is there something that you guys noticed with all speedrunning events that goes on with all speedrunning events? Something they all have in common. Charity. All right. And this is not me hating on charity. I like charity. If charity was a stripper, I'd throw dollar bills on it. And when something is for charity and the whole event is centered around raising money for a charity, it's not a bad thing. However, it makes the tone of the event less competitive, like inherently, because you can say, "Oh, well, it's for charity, right? It's for charity." You're taking words out of my mouth. Making a thing for charity takes away, if it makes sense, takes away from the competitive aspect of something. Like, there's nothing wrong with having it for charity, and things can obviously be for charity. I'm just saying, like, there is no speedrunning event that does not involve charity. Like, every single one, it's all for charity. And I'm just saying, why can't there be one for the players? Charity is like the win-win where no matter what really happens, it all feels good. Exactly. Charity is a win-win, right? Even if you lose, you can hang your hat. You know what? We raised a bunch of money for charity. Like, that's cool. I'm not interested in that, all right? I'm interested in the real shit. So what would speedrun tournaments look like if it was competitive? Why isn't there like I don't want to say 100, it seems like a lot, but like 50 speedrunners that go somewhere the same way they go to Pace, but in a more competitive atmosphere? Why is the only competitive speedrunning thing only for charity? Why are they always just speedrun marathons? Why is there no speedrun esport atmosphere? Now, before we get into the nitty gritty of like tournaments, right? Of tournaments and all the annoying stuff you could imagine when it comes to tournament organizing, we should talk about the randomness of speedrunning. It's RNG's fault. It's not RNG's fault, all right? It's not. But there is something to say about the randomness of speedrunning. And that helps us get to the answer of why there hasn't been, you know, competitive speedrunning. It's mostly all for fun or, you know, raising money for charity. Like, there hasn't been a dedicated speedrunning event. That's live event, okay? Obviously, there's tournaments. You know, we run tournaments every week here. Think about it. It's the randomness of speedrunning, okay? You guys deal with it every single day. Like, if you speedrun, you know what it's like for a random event to occur. And if there's one thing that is terrible in any competitive, you know, setting, is something random happening, right? For example, if you guys don't know, 6 years ago, Fortnite held a winter World Cup or something like that, a winter royale, where they invited like 100 competitive Fortnite players and streamers, I forget, and it was supposed to be a competitive event. The day before this event took place, they added in a overpowered sword that if you grabbed it, you got like 1,000 health, you moved way faster, you went through everyone's builds. It was something random that came to a competitive event the day before it happened, and it ruined the whole event. Was that the Infinity Blade? Yes, thank you for the Infinity Blade. That's a random thing that happened in a competitive setting, and that's what you don't want to happen because it ruins the vibes. The vibes get absolutely shattered. If you take normal sports like football, basketball, soccer, there's randomness in all of it, right? No matter what, even if a competitive sport, as much as we want it to be a fair, level playing field, there is some level of randomness to sports. Whether it be, say, the field is wet, say there's a personal issue with the player, all sorts of drama happening behind the scenes. You never know. There is randomness in it. Chess would like to disagree. No, chess is random too. Say one of the chess players is not feeling well and they misplay. They're humans. They make human errors, right? They're not computers. So no matter what, there's randomness in normal sports as well. I mean, it's more randomness of the person than but it's the same game. The players play the game. The players play the game, Eternal. Think about this. In speedrunning, yes, the game itself is not necessarily random, but the person is. So like LBLJ, I see the best runners reset on that half the time. LBLJ is like, you could say technically not random, right? But it's so incredibly hard. Like it's such a, you have minute inputs to put on in certain frames and you have to be quick about it and you have to press the right buttons at the right time that make it almost random. But there is either also randomness of Salt Class. Exactly. I mean, there's tons of tricks that you can point at. I mean, shit, carpetless. You literally have to pause the game and then like find the frame you're on to do a certain input. Speedrunning is random to like the max pretty much though. Whereas like the randomness in normal sports, like someone taking a basketball shot, it's not necessarily random if it goes in or not, right? It takes a lot of practice. If you think about it, these basketball players could commit their life to it. And if you get 50% percentage shooting, like if you get a 50% field goal percentage in basketball, that's like really good. That's like, if that is your percentage shooting, if you get to hit it half the time on average, that's pretty darn good. We can now talk about tournaments. There's basically two options when it comes to speedrun tournaments. All right. You have a bracket tournament and you have an LTA tournament. So bracket tournaments are your generic tournaments, right? People face off each other. Winner moves on. Winner moves on. Winner is named. Usually all playoffs are like this, right? It's just a tournament. It's a normal bracketed tournament where it's usually one person versus one person. Then, specifically only in speedrunning, basically. I don't think there's any other thing that would make sense for this, but an LTA is where you have a pool of players over the course of time. So they get like 4 hours. 4 hours to speedrun a game. Is golf an LTA if you think about it? Is golf an LTA? That's, I mean, similar. Golf is an LTA as if they only got one run though. So it wouldn't be really, it would be more like a heat. Because golfers don't get to retry. In LTAs, you get unlimited chances, right? Until the time runs out. So in golf, it would just be like a heat. So a heat is just, you know, this is how track and field does it, where you have a set of players all compete and then best time wins. Like you only do one go. Oh my God, I can't. To be fair, straight speedrunning is kind of comparable to track events. Exactly. The problem is the randomness of speedrunning. Like we said, it's so random. I've heard from players where it's kind of frustrating if you only get one chance and then you mess up LBLJ and then you're out, right? That kind of sucks. But then again, if you think about it, like all sports, you only get one shot, right? Look, if you mess up, you mess up. I mean, the problem is speedrunning is so random, right? There are other speedrunning games that actually have like randomness to them. Like maybe you didn't get the correct loading screen type vibe. So that's the only thing I could see would be like a problem with it. But I think like heat-based ones, which is kind of like how Simply's tournament worked, where Simply had everyone go, you know, you had to beat like a 20-minute time or something. Then you had a smaller pool of people. They had to beat an 18-minute time. And then you had a smaller bit of people, 16-minute time. And then you have like your final 10 and so on and so forth. The problem is usually there's not much to recover. In most sports, if you do a mistake and concede a goal, you can get it back. If you lose a minute, it's not really up to you to get back. That's also true. But then again, this is like an individual sport, right? If we're considering speedrunning as a sport, it's an individual sport. It's the same thing with golf, right? Same thing with golf or track. You know, if you mess up, it's on you. And that's why, like, low-key bracket tournaments could work. But personally, I know I run like a variation on LTAs, right? My tournaments are like LTAs, but with like an elimination in between. You have 12 players. After an hour, you go down to 4. Then you go to 8 to 4. Now, I like this better, but I'm biased. I'm extremely biased about it. Me, who does both. Yes, Eternal, who does both. You can, like, Z's also did both. Like Eternal, where you have an LTA portion into a bracket, or have the loser's bracket be an LTA. I'm kind of vibing with Yogo and thinking how track meets work is how speedruns could work as an esport if people got over the fact of the randomness. Like, if they accepted the randomness for what it is. The thing is, I think so many people are against it that it would be such a hard sell. LTAs are the safe bet. However, truly, LTAs might be the least entertaining to watch. And maybe it's not about that. I don't know. I feel like you have to try and balance it in some way. If you were to create like a speedrunning event or something like that, or speedrunning tournament. This is the main issue with speedrunning tournament potential in general. They need to want it. And since speedrunning as a concept isn't a 1v1 competition by default, a lot of runners don't enjoy that type of competition with pressure tends more than how they play usually. Because while speedrunning is competitive, it's low stakes competitive. Exactly. That's actually a good point. It's low stakes, right? It's like a slot machine. You can just keep pulling the reset lever and eventually you'll get one. I believe it was GSA used to pre-2019 run tournaments and leagues and all that tournament things, but now they don't really do it. I think that's why I may be wrong. I was because runners didn't really want it. I could believe that too. I think that actually is a point that we haven't brought up, is that runners, there's a chance runners just don't even want that. They don't want the competitive aspect of it, right? The competitiveness is against themselves, right? It's the leaderboard is their competitive thing. They don't necessarily want a tournament. Now, I feel like there's a market out there for it, but I'm not sure. And we'll speed this up. We've been talking about this for an hour. Time constraints, speedruns in general. Some of them can take a long time. I mean, Lego Star Wars The Complete Saga is like a 2-hour and 20-minute speedrun. And I mean, the 120 star takes an hour and 30 minutes. It's hard to play in tournaments or events, competitive events with times like that, right? That's so much time for one run. And then finally, market size. Like you're saying, there might not be enough runners to actually want a tournament like that. Like you might be right. Like people might just enjoy the chillness of it, right? Like maybe it doesn't have to be so competitive. Maybe it doesn't have to be the most extreme thing. Personally, I like it when it's more competitive, and I'm sure there's people out there that do too. And if you could get a tournament together with like 24 people IRL, I think that would be sick. I didn't think about that too much of like maybe like people wouldn't want it. Like I was more, when I put market size here as a slide, I was thinking like, well, low key, the speedrunning community is a lot more niche than like people like think it is. Like speedrunning as a whole is not the biggest thing on the planet. It's a much more niche category, than you'd expect. Or even like if you break it down, people that actually speedrun the game seriously or practice it is even smaller. But is it possible? Are speedrun tournaments possible? Was this all for nothing? It's not even a goddamn question. You know it's possible. I wouldn't have made this if I didn't think it was possible.